Pythagorean Theorem, and we're going to do it with no algebra. Welcome to PyCrustable Math Shorts. It's not magic, it's math. In this video, we're first going to look at the process. We're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the missing side of a right triangle. Then we're going to do two examples. There's going to be a self-quiz where you're going to solve two triangles by yourself. And finally, there'll be a video task. You can't get good at it unless you practice, practice, practice. Let's look at the process. The Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now the number one rule for the Pythagorean theorem is you can only use the Pythagorean theorem on right triangles. So let's look at this right triangle. I know it's a right triangle because it has a square in one of the angles. The two shorter sides are called legs, and the longest side is the hypotenuse. How do I know which side is the hypotenuse? Well, the right angle points to it. And every time we look at a triangle, we're going to figure out the hypotenuse first. That's going to help us decide which equation we're going to use, the hypotenuse equation or the leg equation. Let's look at the process. First, we're going to figure out what side is missing. We're going to write the formula, fill in what we know, solve it or simplify, and then round to the nearest tenths place if needed. Let's look at our first example. The first thing we do in our process is decide what side is missing. Now for every right triangle, I like to figure out what side is the hypotenuse first, because in the other side are legs. Remember what I said, the right angle points towards the hypotenuse, so we can see that it's the hypotenuse that we're missing. Number two, we need to write the formula. Since it's the hypotenuse we're missing, we're going to write the formula hypotenuse equals the square root of leg squared plus leg squared. And now we're going to fill in what we know. So one of the legs is 17.6 and the other leg is 22.2. It does not matter which one is the first leg and which one is the second leg. Doesn't matter. You could write 22.2 and 17.6. But now we're going to square them. So 17.6 squared is 309.76. 22.2 squared is 492.84. We're going to add those together, and then we're going to take the square root. The last piece to this question is round to the nearest tenths place if needed, and it's needed. So we end up with approximately 28.3 kilometers. Now what's that squiggly line? Well, in math, that means approximately. So our answer is approximately 28.3 kilometers. Once again, we have to find the missing side. So the first thing we have to do is decide what side is missing. I like to mark the hypotenuse first. And so I know that the right angle is pointing towards the hypotenuse. That means the other two sides are legs. It also tells me what we're missing, which is a leg. So we're going to write that formula. Leg equals the square root of hypotenuse squared minus leg squared. We're going to fill in what we know. Well, the hypotenuse is 40 and the leg is 32. 40 squared is 1600. 32 squared is 1024. Now we're going to take the square root. And finally, we need to round to the nearest tenths place if needed. And that gives us approximately 25 centimeters. Here's the self-quiz for this video. I want you to pause the video, complete the questions, and then press play to check your answers. Try not to look back at your notes. So we need to find the missing side in the first triangle. It's a right triangle, and like I said before, I'd like to find the hypotenuse first. So the longest side is always my hypotenuse. Now that I know that, I know that the missing side is a leg. So I'm going to use the leg formula. Leg equals the square root of the hypotenuse squared minus the leg. Now let's put in what we know. We know that 73 is the hypotenuse and 19 is a leg. 73 squared is 5,329. 19 squared is 361. Now we have the square root of 4,968. Let's round that to the nearest tenths. That gives us approximately 70.5. Let's look at our second triangle. First thing I like to do is figure out where is the hypotenuse. Well, now we can see that the hypotenuse is my missing side. I'm going to write that formula. And now I'm going to substitute in what we know. One of the legs is 18.12 and the other leg is 5.07. Now it doesn't matter if you wrote 5.07 and then 18.12. We're going to end up with the same answer. 18.12 squared is 328.3344. 5.07 squared is 25.7049. We're going to add them together and take the square root. Finally, we want to round it to the nearest tenths place, and that gives us approximately 18.8 meters. In the self-quiz, go back and check any pieces that you might have made a mistake in. Those are the pieces that you really have to practice. What do I do next? Well, practice. Practice, practice, practice. There are links to worksheets with answers in the description. Did you like it? Well, like it. Really like it? Well, then subscribe. Did it help you? Well, then share it. And I hope to see you back in the next Pycrustable Math Shorts. It's not magic, it's math.